Mastering TOEFL integrated speaking and writing skills. So hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Better TOEFL Scores. I also have a blog with the same name, bettertoeflscores.com. I'm Michael. In today's video, we're diving deep into the integrated speaking and writing tasks on the TOEFL IBT. These are what we call integrated tasks. These tasks test your ability to combine information from multiple sources, just like you do in real university class. By the end of the video, you'll have sentence structures, transition styles, punctuation tips, and practice exercises to help you crush the TOEFL. More importantly, it'll help you to succeed in college. TOEFL Integrated Speaking Task 2. This is what we call campus related. So you have a reading passage, you have a listening passage on a campus related topic. Typically, you'll have an announcement of some sort. You'll have a student or students discuss the announcement. So here are some sentence styles that you can use. The university is planning to, according to the reading, the main reason is that, in the conversation, the man disagrees because he argues that, this contrast or the reading claim that, and then transition words that you can use might be things like however, in contrast, on the other hand, additionally, as a result. Task 3 is more academic, so it's reading, listening, speaking, academic. Here are some sentence styles you can use here. The reading defines, then mention the concept as, and then define the concept. The professor provides an example to illustrate this idea. For instance, she describes how this example supports the reading by. Some example transition words you can use here are, for example, to illustrate, specifically, such as, maybe, namely. Task 4 is an academic lecture, so it's speaking, listening, or listening, speaking, academic. So here's some example sentence styles. The professor explains the concept of, he gives 2 examples to support this point. In the first example, in the second example, these examples help clarify the concept by. So these are different sentence styles you can use to help you to explain the information. Some transition words you might include first, second, furthermore, and finally. In the integrated writing task, typically you'll have a reading passage which mentions maybe 3 points about a topic. Then you have a lecture which typically contradicts each of those points with reasons. So here are some sentence styles for summarizing and contrasting. The reading passage states that the lecturer, however, refutes this claim by saying that, while the reading asserts, the professor argues, this undermines a point made in the reading. In contrast to the reading, the lecture provides evidence that, and some transition words that you can use, although, despite, on the contrary, whereas, in opposition to. So notice that a lot of these transition words here, especially when you're trying to juxtapose the information from the reading and the lecture, and specifically you're showing how the lecture is different from the information in the reading. It's at that key juncture, that's when you want to use these words here. So writing for an online academic discussion, basically you'll have a professor that brings up a topic. Then you have 2 students discuss the topic. Then you're asked to contribute to the discussion by adding to information already mentioned. So some sentence styles here might be, I agree with Maria's post because, while John brings up a valid point, I believe that. Another perspective to consider is, this idea is supported by. And transition words you can use, in addition, furthermore, moreover, conversely, alternatively, in response. So make sure you kind of know how these things work too. You can go to chat if you need to and have chat give you some example sentences. So in addition, furthermore, moreover, you're basically adding to a point made in the discussion. If you use conversely, you're typically showing something opposite of what was said by one of the students. If you say alternatively, you're giving a different maybe solution to something. Then in response, you're basically responding to something that was said. So as you're integrating the information from the reading, listening, and the academic discussion, you want to make sure you have good control of your punctuation. Here are some common punctuation patterns that you should be aware of. And remember that even though you're speaking punctuation, it's also important because you know what to do with your tone. For example, if you put a period at the end of the sentence, you're going to have falling tone. However, if you have a colon, as in this example here, the tone's going to go up as you pause right before the colon there. So with commas, you can use them after transition words at the beginning of a sentence. That's a pretty common pattern. For example, the professor disagrees with the reading. Colons introduce lists or explanations. The reading mentions 3 problems: cost, time, and efficiency. Semicolons are typically used to connect 2 independent but related clauses. The professor disagrees. He believes the idea is unrealistic. So notice in this case, when you look at that, we have to say, so you see the semicolon here. So we have this is an independent clause, this is an independent clause, and we have to assume by the use of the semicolon, you're trying to imply a close relationship between these 2 ideas. Periods, to separate complete thoughts clearly. Dashes for emphasis or to insert additional information. The man, clearly frustrated, argues against the policy. There is a quote that says, "Hearing is good, seeing is better, but doing is best." So I'm now going to show you examples of how you can combine information from 2 sources, like a reading or listening passage, or maybe you want to add to the academic discussion that you see. So after we go through some practice exercise examples, I actually have some exercises I want you to practice, and then you can see a possible answer after. So remember that the doing, actually writing down and combining the sentences on your own, and then comparing how you integrated the 2 sources with the model response. I think this is where you begin to really make some progress. It isn't just about hearing or seeing, but you need to do this. You need to practice. It's very important. Okay, let's take a look at task 2 example. We have the reading. University is removing vending machines. The student disagrees. They provide convenience between classes, right? So that these are the ideas. So then your response might be, the university plans to remove vending machines due to health concerns. However, the student disagrees, arguing they are a convenient option between classes. So that would be an example of how you can integrate information from these 2 areas. Task 3 example. Reading. Define social loafing. The listening. Professor gives an example of group project failure. So here's a sample of how you can combine those. The reading defines social loafing as reduced effort in group settings. The professor supports this by describing a group project where one student relied too much on others. Task 4 example. The lecture describes two types of camouflage, or describes two types of camouflage, mimicry and background matching. So then as you explain it, your response might be like this. The professor explains two camouflage strategies, mimicry and background matching. In the first example, he describes an insect that looks like a twig. Integrated writing example, the reading says coal is the best energy option. Listening, the lecturer disagrees, mentions environmental and health issues. So your model sentence might be, while the reading argues coal is cost effective, the lecturer refutes this by citing its environmental impact and long-term health costs. So notice in this case, we have the word while in the very beginning. So while is what we call a subordinating conjunction. You use it in an adverb clause, a dependent clause, and it shows that the information in the reading is different from the information in the lecture. You're trying to show a contrast. That's the purpose of using that particular word. Now, if you don't like using this dependent clause connector, this subordinating conjunction, there's other options, right? This is where you begin to excel as a writer and you show your syntactic variety. If you said the reading argues coal is cost effective, period. However, the lecture refutes this by citing its environmental impact and long-term health costs. So you could certainly put however after cost effective. In this case, you now have two separate sentences, and you're showing the contrast between the reading and the lecture. That would be another way to do it. You could even say the reading argues coal is cost effective, comma, but the lecture refutes this by citing its environmental impact and long-term health costs. So that would be a third way to do it. So that's the key, is you have options. You know various ways of combining information, whether you use a transition word, a subordinating conjunction, or a coordinating conjunction. You're showing the relationship between the ideas in the reading and the listening passage. Writing for an online academic discussion, the post is solar energy is too expensive. So let's say that you want to add to this, and specifically you want to disagree and then add. So you might say, I disagree with the idea that solar energy is too costly. In the long term, it reduces utility bills and reliance on fossil fuels. That would be a sentence that you could use based on the post. Okay, now are you ready? So I'm going to show you a possible answer after each exercise, but don't look at the answer until you've combined the sentences yourself. So the instructions. Try combining information using clear sentence structures, transitions, and punctuation. And you can even practice. Once I show you the possible answer, you can hear me read it out loud, then you can practice reading it out loud yourself, working on your pronunciation. Okay, number one. So let's say we have a campus announcement, speaking task 2. So the reading, the main point is the university plans to eliminate on-campus shuttle service due to budget cuts. And in the listening, a student disagrees and says, the shuttle helps students without cars and is essential during bad weather. So at this point, you want to combine the information from these two sources. Now here's a possible answer of how you can do it. The university wants to cancel the shuttle service to save money. However, the student disagrees, explaining that many students rely on it, especially during rain and snow. So how does your possible answer compare to this? And make sure that your answer, it's integrating information from both the reading and the listening. And in this case, you're not taking your own opinion, you're simply explaining the two sources. Number 2, so this is speaking task number 3, academic. The reading Cognitive dissonance is when a person holds conflicting beliefs, leading to mental discomfort. In the listening, a professor explains that a smoker who knows smoking is unhealthy but continues to smoke may feel cognitive dissonance. So take a minute and combine the information from these two sources. Now let's check at a possible answer. You could say something like this. The reading defines cognitive dissonance as holding two opposing beliefs. The professor supports this idea with the example of a smoker who knows smoking is bad, but does it anyway, causing discomfort. Speaking task 4, academic lectures. So in the lecture, here's what more or less what you hear. A professor explains two types of memory, short-term and long-term. She says short-term memory holds information briefly like a phone number, while long-term memory stores information for years like language or life experiences. So practice re-explaining this information. So remember, you're kind of taking the concept that's explained in the beginning and then integrating that with the examples provided after that. Okay, let's take a look at a possible answer. So in this case, you might say the professor describes two types of memory. Short-term memory keeps information for a short time, like remembering a number, while long-term memory stores knowledge like language and events. So that kind of takes this idea and paraphrases it. And remember that paraphrase is a really good skill. You might, well, Michael, there's no originality. That's not really what the point of the writing is, to see if you can take ideas, read them, can you understand them, can you listen to them, can you put them in a way that's even easier than the original sources, using your own grammar and your own vocabulary. So that's a really good language skill to have, especially if you're needing to go to college or you need English for professional purposes. Okay, let's do a practice exercise with integrated writing. So the reading says, some scientists believe wind energy is a cheap and clean alternative to fossil fuels. The lecturer challenges this idea, saying wind farms are noisy, expensive to maintain, and harm bird populations. Now, how would you combine that? Here's what I consider a possible answer here. Notice the use of the word while. You could even say whereas if you wanted to. While the reading says wind energy is clean and inexpensive, the lecturer disagrees, pointing out noise pollution, high maintenance costs, and dangers to wildlife. So that would be an accurate paraphrase of the information in these two sources. Writing for an academic discussion. So in the professor's post, the idea is, should students be required to take physical education classes in college? So student 1 says yes, it promotes a healthy lifestyle and reduces stress. So now you want to contribute to the post and add to what student 1 has said. So it might look something like this. I agree with student 1. In addition, physical activity has been linked to better concentration on academic performance, which benefits students in other courses too. So notice how this idea of academic performance here, it adds to the healthy lifestyle and the stress reduction. And that would be what you're trying to do. You're not trying to repeat exactly what everybody's already said. How does that contribute meaningfully to a discussion? It does not. You're trying to add to the conversation, bring in something new for people to think about. Speaking task 2, campus change. The reading. The library will extend its weekend hours to give students more time to study. In the listening, a student supports the change, saying it's hard to find quiet places to study at home on the weekends. So now add or integrate the information from those two sources. Now let's take a look at a possible answer and kind of think about, okay, how did you do? So in combining these two sources, you might say the library is extending weekend hours. The student agrees, saying it's difficult to study at home and this challenge will help students focus better. Did you notice that I'm actually using, if you pay attention, always pay attention to the language, right? I think it's important to, because the better control you have of the language, the better you're going to do on the TOEFL exam. But did you guys notice how in these examples is extending, the student agrees, it is difficult, this change will help. So when I'm explaining the information from the reading and the listening, I'm typically using present tense verbs. In this case, we have the present progressive, we have the simple present, and then we have the simple future here. So if you wanted to say the library was extending its hour, the student agreed, saying it was difficult, it would help. If you want to approach it using past tense verbs, I think it's possible to do that. I don't prefer it, but the key is consistency. Once you start mixing and matching present and past in your paraphrase, that's where your score starts dropping because you're not showing you can control your verb tenses. So do not be inconsistent with verb tenses. That's a big, big issue with your language use. Number 7, we have speaking task 3, academic topics. So the reading talks about opportunity cost, which is the value of the next best alternative you give up when making a decision. Then the listening says, the professor gives an example of choosing to work instead of going to a concert. The opportunity cost is the fun missed at the concert. So then you want to try to combine the information from the reading, which is basically the academic concept defined, and then the listening, which is an example to illustrate that point. So what does that look like? You might want to take a minute, pause the video, and write it down. Remember that doing, you can hear me all day. So what? Who cares? Can you actually do it? Can you combine the sentences like this? How about that? The reading defines opportunity cost as the value of what you give up. The professor illustrates this with the example working instead of going to a concert, meaning the opportunity cost is missing the fun. So hopefully by now you have the big vision. A lot of students, they focus so much on getting a high TOEFL score, they kind of miss the whole picture. Right? So mastering integrated speaking and writing isn't just about scoring high on the TOEFL. It's about preparing for real academic communication in college. These sentence patterns, transitions, and punctuation skills will help you not only pass a test, but thrive in your university classes. And guess what? Academic posts, academic discussions, are you kidding me? I'm a professor at California State University, San Bernardino. This is one of the most common speaking and writing activities that we have in our university courses, our discussions. So if you want personalized feedback on your integrated speaking and writing responses, check out my $99 a month TOEFL speaking and writing feedback service at bettertoeflscores.com. It's actually pretty simple. When you go over to bettertoeflscores.com, you'll see a free writing and free speaking course. You can start your courses today. There's no passwords, there's no emails. You don't have to enter any information whatsoever. You can start your course immediately. And then if you want to get feedback, if you want me to grade any of the speaking or writing practice tests, you can subscribe to my speaking and writing feedback service. It's as simple as that. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a TOEFL tip again. Thank you for watching my video and keep practicing.